Hello, wonderful 8th graders. For our final project of the year and our cumulative assessment for World War II, you will be happy to know that you will not have to take a test. Instead, what you are going to do is create a 9-frame comic strip over the different stages of World War II. The purpose of this assignment is for you to look at World War II and determine its long-lasting impact on the United States. I will be assigning you what each frame of your comic should be covering. They are as follows. Frame 1, the United States before World War II. This can include anything from the Great Depression to the U.S. isolationist foreign policy adopted after World War II. So for that frame, you may have to think back to our last chapter on the Great Depression, but it's really important to know where we started before we get into actually covering World War II itself. Frame 2, the United States involvement before Pearl Harbor. This can include the different things that they did to aid the Allied powers before they directly got involved. That would cover things like the Lend-Lease Act. Frames 3 and 4, since we spent quite a bit of time covering the home front during World War II, a reminder that's what is going on in the United States while World War II is going on. For those 2 frames, you can include things like Japanese internment, we talked about that, and the role of women in the United States, or even abroad if you want to cover that, so the role of women during World War II. Frame 5, you want to focus on the fighting, specifically in Europe, so you're looking at that European theater, covering some of those elements of what fighting was like there. Frame 6 is fighting in the Pacific. So that's the fighting in those islands in the Pacific Ocean as we were fighting Japan. Frame 7, we're getting to the end of the conflict itself. You want to cover the decision to drop the atomic bomb. Obviously, one of the most well-known elements of World War II is that dropping of the atomic bomb. I want you guys to focus on what went into that decision itself. And the last 2 frames, frames 8 and 9, you're going to cover the long-lasting impact of World War II. These frames are up to you, but make sure you explain why we should know about World War II and how the world, and specifically the United States, was different after its conclusion. In terms of what needs to go into creating a comic strip itself, what I'm going to talk about now is just some tips for you to look at when creating a comic strip. Make sure all of your information is historically accurate. Obviously, this is a history class. You want to make sure we're covering things that are correct. To do this, I would suggest using your textbook, chapter 26. That is from pages 800 to 837. You've read some of these sections already. Some of them you'll be reading them for the first time for this assignment. Additionally, we had a lot of extra reading materials between primary source documents, different readings, different activities that we did. Look back at some of those. Those will also help you figure out what to include in your comic strip. The second tip I have is when you're doing a comic strip, make sure you have one continuous story. You can do this multiple ways. For example, you can have one character and show these events through that character's point of view. The real important thing is that it is a continuous story. You want to have some logical flow. It shouldn't just be a series of 9 different cartoons that have no connection whatsoever. So make sure you guys are telling it as a continuous story. Tip number 3 I have for you, use your captions. Captions are a big part of this assignment. But really, it's going to help you explain what is going on in your comic strip. Not all of us are artists. These captions are there for you to help explain what is going on in the cartoon itself. Additionally, your last tip, please take your time with illustrations. I understand that everyone's not a great artist. I promise if you all saw me draw, which many of you have already, you would feel a lot better about your own work. This is not an art class, but I am expecting a high level of effort. I'm not going to grade you on the amazingness of the drawings themselves, but I am expecting that you put some effort into it. That means no stick figures, and each frame does need to be colored. Make sure you guys demonstrate that you put a lot of effort into that. Additionally, one last thing, you can, it's not a requirement, but you can have dialogue. Obviously that kind of makes it more entertaining. It is a comic strip, so please feel free to make it funny where it is appropriate for you to be funny, and to do that, some interesting dialogue would be helpful there. The last thing I want to say, as we are getting ready to really kind of start going along and creating our comic strips, is that since this is going to take the place of one of those essay tests that I know you all know and love, understand that this assignment is going to be worth the same amount as your tests have been in the past. So that is 60 points. It will be the largest grade you will have this quarter. It'll be one of the last assignments you have too. So if you are not happy with your grade at this point, I would suggest using class time wisely this week, and your time wisely at home to do a really good job with these concepts.